Welcome to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cassidy Paving. Contact Cassidy Paving at CassidyPaving.com for all your paving needs. To be a sponsor on our podcast, contact me at rkaplan@nerej.com. And we got a guest today that has an interesting story. And I know he was in Boston for a while, so, anyone from Boston cannot be all bad. You got to be some good. And so I want to introduce you to Leo Young, and he's with Cornell Communities. And Leo, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Rick, thanks for having me on the show first off. Real quick context on Cornell Communities. We're an owner-operator of manufactured housing communities across the U.S. So, we help provide affordable housing and make our investors risk-adjusted returns. So my journey up until this point has been kind of interesting because it's not something that's linear. It's not like, hey, there's a track to becoming a founder or managing partner at a real estate investment firm. So I started as a finance major in college. I was always interested into investments. To me, I think investments is the real world application of philosophy. So philosophy, it's like, okay, where do you think the world is going to go to? And wherever you think it's going to go to, you place a strategic bet on there with your money. And hey, look, if you buy Tesla stock 10 years ago, now you're pretty happy. So that's the genesis of that. And so after college, I took a leap of faith. I went into sales because it meant I could work for my dream company, Tesla, at the time. And it was such an enriching experience, which I could definitely tell you more about. But went into sales at Tesla, worked from knowing nothing about sales to their top regional salesperson, got somewhat burnt out, looked for ways to kind of build cash flow that doesn't depend on me clocking in and out. Got into real estate, started investing as a passive investor, and then fell in love with it. Got my real estate license, was learning and earning. So I was doing brokerage, hanging around a lot of the people that you know. And then during COVID, got recruited by a real estate fund out of New York, eventually moved to New York, and then was approached by a friend who is like wanting to start his own fund. And I thought it was a great idea. So, here we are, 4.5 years later. So yeah, really grateful to be here.
Well, I love that story. And you're the first person I ever met that worked for Tesla and didn't leave and left.
Yeah.
You, most
Yeah.
people that work for Tesla, they stayed or they retired real early. You know?
Yes. Yep. They either stayed or they retired early or they got fired.
Yeah.
And at the time when I was there, it was brutal. I mean, the amount of like hate that they were getting and like they were just fighting against the world. Nobody wanted to believe in electric cars and stuff. It was such a surreal moment looking back. But yeah, I mean, every day it was like you're going to war a little bit. Not to, overhype up that experience, but yeah, I mean, like people would get fired on a random Tuesday, like whole departments get laid off, and like Elon's doing his thing. So, I mean, it's really cool to kind of be a part of that experience.
So I take it you are a fan of Elon Musk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously not for everything. It's like things that I agree with him on, like on the macro view. It's like he's doing good for the world. He's got insane work ethic. You can learn a lot from him, how he prioritizes and whatnot.
So SpaceX is probably going to be his hero, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
See, I don't know enough about SpaceX. I did just finish his biography, his 95 chapter biography by Walter Isaacson, where he goes into a lot of detail on the upcoming of it. I think it is a novel concept. He's always been one to seek the truth. And the truth in this application is that, specifically for space flight, that it shouldn't be a cost plus model. Because the traditional guys like Northrop or whoever, like they charge like whatever their cost is plus a profit premium, so like 15% profits or something. Meanwhile, they're like, well, we could do this for like 10% of the cost, so like why not? So he took all that risk, built everything for that, eventually like failed 4 times, succeeded, and then, rest is history.
So let's move on to Cornell communities, because that's your real thing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what Cornell
hmm
communities. I know you mentioned it at the beginning, but basically an investment model for people to get like uh, build their own kind of portfolio with just a residual type of income.
Exactly, exactly. So we operate with the private equity model. So technically, we're a private equity real estate company. And what we do is we go out and we purchase commercial real estate. In this case, it's mobile home parks, and we partner with investors who are silent partners. So what they do is they contribute their capital. They're completely hands off. They don't have any responsibilities as far as finding the deal, analyzing them, operating them, or anything. So our team does everything. They get their proportionate share of whatever profits come from it. And that's basically the model.
So what's the minimum uh, that a investor would want to put into this or can put into it?
It generally depends opportunity to opportunity. I think for the most part, our minimums, we try to keep it lower, around like 50,000. I know for the private equity world, it can range anywhere between, like low end 50,000 to high end, and it's like 10 million. So like the previous fund I used to work at was 10 million. I'm like, I can't really feel the impact that I'm giving versus like this. It's like a lot of like regular people. They're like, hey, I want to do this, and it makes a lot of sense.
So this would be a great concept for someone that is looking for a place to put their cash and have some kind of a regular income coming out of it for their retirement.
Yeah, I mean it's a way to turn cash into cash flow. And if you think about it, especially in the private markets and private equity, it's not as correlated to the public market. So, just looking at a lot of, successful investors, like how they kind of diversify their portfolio, there's like a specific portion of it towards private equity that doesn't depend on like what's on the headline. It's just like, hey, I own this business, and because I'm X% owner, I get this, percentage of income to me no matter what happens. And in our case, it's real estate, and paying rent isn't going to go out of style, right? It's not going to get disrupted by AI or something.
So what's the average return on most of the investments?
It generally depends, and obviously, like disclaimer, not financial advice, not solicitation or anything, but generally we target for double-digit returns, call it like roughly like 15%, which is pretty strong for what it is, and the goal being, and the reason being is that, these investments are illiquid. So it's not like you can just open up your Robinhood on a random Tuesday and just sell your stock, right? It's not as easy. You're in this for the long term, and that's actually a feature of it because it's less volatile, and we want to build sustainable businesses.
So they put their 50 grand in. They have to, how long do they have to hold it? Or is there a period where they can get to the point where they can withdraw it?
Yeah, so how we do it, there's a few different ways, right? If they ever want their capital back, there's three main ways. One, during the hold period. So, for the most part, we plan to hold on these assets anywhere between 2 and 7 years. And midway between, we want to do a refinance. So, basically, we've improved the value of the property enough that we can get a bigger loan. The income supports the new loan's debt service, and then, you take the original cash out. So that's when you can get a portion of your funds back. Or, classic is just if we sell the property at any point in time, like you get your proceeds back. Or another way is just, secondary offering. So like if, you go to your buddy Joe and you're like, hey, look, I've been a part of this. Like, I kind of need funds for, I don't know, like my daughter's wedding is coming up. Do you want to buy my shares? Sure. It's just like any other, share transfer. And then obviously, like ongoing, you get, distributions monthly, quarterly, like whatever the setup is.
So they can't pull their funds out unless they sell it to someone else. correct?
They sell it or we give it back to them through refinance or the property sells. And that's like more or less like their basis, but you get ongoing cash flow.
Now, what happens if there's a death and the family now uh,
Yeah.
inherits this? Can they take that money out?
So through those three methods, yes. A lot of what happens generally is like they go through their own estate planning and stuff. I mean, everyone's situation is a little bit different, but they might come to us and say like, hey, look, we want help to, offload this, like, and for the most part, like if we're able to, we'd be happy to buy the shares back ourselves because we know the property, we know how well it's running, and we'd be happy to take it off your hands. But if you know someone else, like, they're happy to, or they're welcome to buy it as well. We'll, arrange for it to happen.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think that's where the only problem I would see in something like that is only because in an inheritance, sometimes there's like multiple people getting pieces of the estate. And you know, you can't just say, "Oh, all right, well, I'm going to keep mine. You take yours." You got to either take it all or nothing.
Well, yeah, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty of like estate planning and stuff. I mean, you could, maybe split up your ownership or something. Some people sell, some people don't, and there's like a lot of intricacies, and it's like person to person and situation to situation.
Well, I guess it's almost like selling a house. You sell the house,
Yeah.
and then you can either else in the family might buy it all from the other people. They get their money and they get out, and that's all they wanted. And the other person owns the 100% of the property now. So I guess it's
Yeah.
on the same idea as that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like any other asset transfer. People kind of decide with their own situation, like what's right for them.
Yeah, I always use like layman's terms, but
Yeah,
asset returns
makes
and things
sense.
like that.
Yeah,
That's the proper term to use.
yeah.
But I uh, I find it interesting that if people are watching this, they'll see behind you there's these uh, yeah, what are those? They're not mobile homes. Well, you said that mobile homes
Manufactured
and
housing,
these,
mobile homes.
yeah. So all the properties are similar to that.
Yeah. So the kind of nuance between why mobile home parks, trailer parks, manufactured housing communities, they're all different terms for the same kind of thing is because the homes behind us back in the day, pre-HUD, they used to be called mobile homes and trailers, and post 1976, HUD came in. HUD was like, hey, we need to standardize how you build these homes. Like they need to have certain features that just make it more code compliant or something like that. So now it's called a manufactured home. So it's legally been called a manufactured home since 1976, but it's just a mouthful for someone to say. So that they're just like, oh yeah, that trailer over there. So it's all pointing towards the same thing. But the cool part is that these get built in factories and they're drop shipped at your property. So it's not like you have to go through the standard process and like, put up the stick built home, build the inside and stuff. Like these are pretty standardized. And so there's fewer complexities, call it, if you ever wanted to um, have one of these or live in one of them. And I think the one thing I will add, Rick, is that the interesting part about manufactured housing and why it's so compelling is because that the cost to own one of these is much, much less. Like an average single family home in the US right now is around like 425,000 as opposed to, manufactured home like all in you're under 100,000. So it's about 25% of it. So, for folks that want to own their own home, start building equity into something like they could do this. They don't have to, say that you can't afford like a home, you just get one of these.
So Leo, you own the property, the land,
Yeah.
and the buyer would buy the what do they call, what did you call it? Not a mobile home,
Manufactured homes, mobile
manufactured
homes.
home.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right. It's
Yeah.
manufactured home. I
Yeah.
like to call it a trailer park, basically.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. They're
that's
all the
probably
same
not a
terms.
good term for it nowadays.
I mean, it depends because like there's different qualities of them. Like some you'll drive through, you're like, wow, this place is really run down. Others like you can't even tell. You're like, what? That's a trailer park? And I mean, these are like immaculate. I mean, Barbara Corcoran, one of the Shark Tank people, like she has a trailer inside a trailer park that's worth $2 million in California.
Wow.
So, I mean, it really ranges from, uh, pretty much like all like class A, B, C, D, when it comes to real estate. So, the kind of gist of it and how this setup works is that we buy the property, so the land effectively. So we maintain the common areas, lighting, roads, utilities, stuff like that. And then people, they own their own homes. On top of it, they do their own maintenance. And it's like a subdivision feeling because they have their own driveway, their own garden and stuff like that. It's not like an apartment building. So they like that. Generally, they stay here for much, much longer than, an apartment building. Because like apartment building, like people come and go, like maybe they stay there for a year or two, as opposed to, 10 years plus here. So, for us, people owning this asset, we like it because it's stable occupancy. People stay here because the value is compelling because they like it.
So when someone invests in this, they're investing in buying the land and then you putting on these mobile homes, and they're getting some of their return on what you sold on the land, plus the portion of the rent that comes from the land. You know, I'm trying to follow.
So yeah, I mean,
What portions do
a
they
large
get?
part, yeah. So they get a portion of all the profit. So like any money that comes in and out because they're, a part owner of this. And I would say the large majority comes from rents. Very, very little comes from actually selling the homes because we don't actually try to profit off of selling the homes. For us, like we operate with the HOA model. It's just like, hey, we'll maintain this, like you pay your HOA fee kind of thing. So for the most part, they're paying anywhere between like $300 to $800 for their lot rent. So for their lot to put on their homes there, and you might be thinking like, wow, that's a really low kind of rental amount, but it's by design because you have more of these units, and it's actually a very simple kind of business model because if you compare it to running an apartment building, you need like a live-in super. You need to maintain the elevators. You need a leasing office. You need like common areas. Like you're managing an act. It's a much simpler way to do it, and there's a lot of benefits. So yeah, that's the main differences.
So you have a rental manufactured home, and you have
Mhm.
a purchased manufactured home. Are those on the same property? Some are manufactured
Yeah.
that are purchased, and some are rentals.
Yeah, yeah. So you usually, we call them like tenant-owned homes versus park-owned homes. So, some we as the park owners own them. So usually, what happens if there's an empty spot in the property, we buy it from a manufacturer like Clayton. Clayton Homes is owned by Warren Buffett. So, they would bring this in, and then we would try to sell it directly to the resident, but sometimes we would just rent it. Um, but yeah, it's all in the same. Like, looking behind you, it's not like you could tell which one is resident owned, which one is park owned. They're just all the same.
So you take care of all the landscaping and all that on the properties through
The
that
the common
HOA?
area. Yeah, yeah, the common area, but inside their own lot, that it's up to them, if they want to like put out little garden gnomes or something like that, they could do so, maintain their own yard space. But common areas, that's kind of mainly what we're responsible for. And if you think about it, it's a pretty simple kind of business model. And that's why, as a investment, it's really compelling.
No, because I see there's some nice landscaping in front of some of these. Is
Yeah.
that, and the grass is nice and green and cut? Is
Mhm.
that something that the HOA takes care of in this?
Generally not. People like to maintain their own space. It's like, for your own home, like you maintain your garden if you want to put in like, you know, whatever kind of shrubbery versus like another, like that's your decision. So yeah, it's generally
Now, do you
individual.
have any amenities that you offer in these communities?
So we operate in a more kind of working class price range. We want to keep the lot rents lower by design rather than, some of the lot rents can get really high up there with amenity packages. So we generally don't. Most people they just live there. They don't really care about like a pool or anything because there's the same amenities in town or something like that.
So this is the new a new concept. It's been around for ages, but it's kind of a new
Yeah.
concept that you're coming up with. And I, this is like perfect timing right now because everyone's looking for affordable housing and more housing. So this is like you're
Yeah.
building communities with the affordable housing, and it's also, I mean, on an average,
Yeah.
how much acreage does one house take up?
Yeah, so as far as acreage, it really depends on the area. We have places, in like New Jersey, for example, that it's like a much smaller lot as opposed to Oklahoma, right? You have all the land in the world and stuff.
Right.
But as far as, I think you hit the nail on the head that the demand versus supply for this is what makes this so compelling because people want affordable housing, not like affordable meaning government subsidized, but just like a low dollar amount for the value that they get. So we've been having just really strong interest across the board for people wanting to move in, and we just don't have enough space for them. And that to us is kind of insurance, call it, because if people move out, people move right in. So it helps us keep the properties occupied. Helps it giving out strong returns, and then we're also gradually increasing the housing supply for this kind of product because like we talk about this like I remember in the brokerage days and people are like hey we all want affordable housing but like developers they're only building luxury housing but yeah I mean that's because math only makes sense for luxury housing but for manufactured housing it's like you can actually give them a new product for a really low price for the same price as they can move into like a regular apartment building in town. So, to people, this is much more compelling. They actually get to build equity into something that they'll own one day too.
Now, this is something that was kind of popular back in the 60s, I would say, where
Yeah,
they were building these mobile homes and
yeah,
mobile home communities. And we had plenty of land in the Northeast for them to do it.
yeah,
And now it's very tight. Like when
yeah,
we first started talking, and I know you're from New York City, and I'm saying, where do you fit a mobile home in New York City? And it's almost
yeah.
impossible. So,
Yeah. It's super tough, and that therein lies, one of the kind of challenges facing the industry is redevelopment. Because in real estate, like if you take a real estate class, they're always like, what's the highest and best use for this property right here? And for the most part, you'll see that, especially in places like I don't know, like Connecticut, Massachusetts, like New Hampshire, these like better places. For them, it's better to redevelop it. It's worth more to the municipality, it's worth more to the community if it's like a shopping center. Like the tax revenue compared of a mobile home park compared to a shopping center, it's like 100x difference. So a lot of them do get redeveloped and people get displaced. So for us, like our mission is to continue offering that affordable housing. We make kind of the necessary repairs. I mean, there's a lot of deferred maintenance for these things. As you said, these properties are old. They have like aging infrastructure. We need to navigate through like approvals, like big capex projects and stuff like that to keep it going. But that's our goal. Keep it sustainable to make sure that it doesn't get redeveloped.
well, it's always had um, well, not in the 60s, but in the 90s, if someone was living in a mobile home, they kind of had uh, uh, I don't know, they were looked bad upon, they look like, oh, this is someone that's been struggling or close to homelessness, but in reality, this is probably a great way to have housing and it be affordable, for middle class people.
Hmm.
It's just
Yeah. It's been interesting, like if you're a fan of history at all, kind of just looking into the history of mobile home parks, manufactured housing communities, like back initially, when it started in the 40s, 50s, 60s, like, Elvis was living in it. It was the thing. It was super hip. Like you can have like retro colors and like it's all really cool and stuff. And then, somewhere in between like 70s, 90s, it kind of dropped off. People stopped caring about it. Deferred maintenance started building up and stuff. People started building their homes because it was like financially viable to do so. But then now, as things start to get more unaffordable and like, inflation's at all-time highs, it's kind of crazy. And like, the younger generation, they're like, well, hey, I just want to have a place where I can build equity, where I can live, for the same rent, I would rather not have an upstairs neighbor like with kids that wake me up with their stomping. Like I'd rather have my own place. So I like
right.
this. And I think the interesting part is that the younger generation doesn't really care what the previous generation um, says or thinks. Like, like even in the workplace, right? Like they behave a lot differently than our older counterparts, even my generation, right? So they're like, okay, this makes sense. I want to move in. And that's what's happening.
Yeah, I go to Delray, Florida a lot, and I know in Florida there's a lot of mobile home
Yeah,
parks.
a ton.
There is one that's right on the intercoastal in Florida, in Delray. Is I'm not sure if it's Delray or West Palm Beach, but it's right there.
Yeah.
And there's been developers because it's right on the water. Developers wanting to buy it, and the each home is owned. The land and the home are owned by the individual.
Hmm. Okay.
The developer has been going in offering them millions of dollars, and no one
Wow.
wants to sell it.
Right.
Because
Waterfront property.
well, and where are they going to go for
Yeah.
$1 million and have a home right on the water with their own little dock?
Right.
It's almost impossible. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
there are developments like that. I know another developer that built one in Dennis, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
There was a mobile home there, a mobile home park that was right on the beach practically,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they bought all the land.
Hmm.
Now the owner of the mobile park owned the land, didn't own the so they could move them, the mobile homes. They could move
Mhm.
them. So it wasn't that big of an issue. I'm sure they gave them some good money to also get that property as well. So,
Yeah.
but one of the things that I know they told me at the time is that they had issues. The mobile park had issues with the septic systems. They
Mhm.
had to either upgrade them, which would have cost millions of dollars, or had to come up with another solution. So that's
Yeah.
one of the things when you're talking about you have to restore some of these older parks or,
Yeah.
bring them back to life somewhat.
Absolutely. There's kind of all across the board, I think infrastructure is the big thing when it comes to sustaining this type of housing is that, like what you said, maybe some septic systems are older, towards the end of their useful life, or, if you're in New England, everything's past its useful life, right? And you have
That's
like
true.
literally like 150-year-old homes and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, these things need to be replaced, and, how do you do it? Get the approvals, get the components for it. How do you budget for it? So I think sometimes, making that tough choice to be like, okay, well, we need to do this to be able to set aside this amount of money to be able to in year three maybe have enough to, do this like in phases or things like that. Maybe connecting to municipal utilities, that's usually super expensive. So kind of just seeing at a high level, like what does this property need? And, making that tough decision to do so.
Now we also have stronger storms
Yeah.
that have been coming in. And
Yeah.
that's it, all over the country, actually all over the world. Uh, One of the things that was always an issue is that in these hurricane areas and tornado areas, the mobile homes used to get destroyed before anything else got
Oh
destroyed.
yeah.
So I know they have new anchoring systems that they've put in place, and is that something that's been an issue that you found?
So, climate's definitely another big thing that we look at in terms of like where we purchase our properties. Fortunately, knock on wood, it hasn't been too bad. Even like we've had like a tornado come through. It didn't really do too much damage, fortunately. But yeah, I mean, in general, the it's kind of like two sides of the coin. Is like one side, okay, maybe this isn't as good as a concrete home like you see in Europe or Asia, or like a stick built home, like to some degree, but also the dollar amount is much smaller. So, you're more likely, to be made whole by insurance. Like everyone has their own insurance and stuff. Sometimes like if it's a really, catastrophe, event or something, FEMA might step in, or like, the federal government. And yeah, I mean, you're more likely to be made whole as opposed to, if you live in like a home, like a stick-built home, you're like, oh, like what's this cost? Like how am I going to rebuild this for the same cost? It's very hard. And then, for a manufactured home, it's like, all right, I'll just place another order with Clayton Homes. It'll be dropped here in a couple of weeks, and I'm good again. So it's pros and cons to everything.
Well, that's a very good point because some people are still trying to find the money or trying to get the contractors to build their home that was destroyed maybe 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's a very good point that you brought up. So now, if someone is interested in investing in this, where would they go to? Oh, do they go to a website or do
Yeah.
they contact someone?
Yeah. So generally, how it works with our investor community, we have a few opportunities per year. It's not very often because we have a very high bar internally. We're very selective with what we bring on, and usually our projects oversubscribe, meaning that more people are interested than we have spots available. So generally, it's like join our investor wait list. And you can do that through our website. You can visit us at cornellcommunities.com. That's CORNELLCOMMUNITIES.com. You can learn more about the asset class, talk to our team, learn more, and then join our investor wait list.
Boy, you're a good speller.
I,
That's, it'd take me a week to
I
get
know
all
even
that
I have
out.
trouble spelling communities. Like, when I'm on the phone, I'm like spelling it wrong. So I just make sure to spell it out.
Yeah, no, that was great. Leo, I appreciate you coming on. We're talking with Leo Young, and he is with Cornell Communities. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on, Leo. Great
Yeah.
conversation.
Thanks for having me on.
I really like this. I like the
Yeah.
idea. I like the concept.
It's very practical, and I will say that it's very misunderstood. I think traditionally not a lot of research has been done into the place. Like people don't really understand it; they take it at face value. So you'll see like headlines say one thing, but then like when you dig into it, it actually makes a lot of sense. So yeah,
Well, you're absolutely correct because when I first heard about what this was all about,
yeah,
the first impression I get is I get the trailer park.
yeah,
And the trailer park is the concept of the trailer park, which most of us have known is what they call the rundown
yeah.
trailers with trash
Eminem,
all
like Eight
over.
Mile, like
Yeah.
Trailer Park Boys, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's the image I get.
Yeah,
Although there
for
was a
sure.
TV show, I don't know if you remember, called The Rockford Files.
No, I've heard of it, haven't watched
Okay,
it.
he lived in a trailer,
Hmm.
a motorhome, a mobile home.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
a lot is changing. People are kind of realizing, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad. And like, I can pick, my quality of home just like any other home. So there's like more and more people wanting here. I mean, in fact, like over 20 million Americans live inside mobile home parks.
well, I
So
would think at this time, with all this talk about affordability and lack of housing, I would think there would be such a demand for this type of housing right now.
Yeah, there's a couple of challenges. One of them is zoning. Traditionally, like municipalities didn't really want that for a multitude of reasons. Like, tax revenue isn't enough for like the amount of school kids in here. They're like just way over budget. It's like a big burden to them. Also, like kind of like NIMBYism is like, hey, what's that going to do to my Zillow value? Like if I have a trailer park in my backyard. But then also like now for the developers too, it doesn't make sense because it costs way too much to build this, to lay the infrastructure and stuff. So we're all buying these existing communities below replacement cost, just because of like labor, cost of financing, insurance, all that stuff.
Now, when you sell someone one of these properties, is there a clause in it that they have to have that property maintained to a certain standard?
Yeah, yeah. Generally, like we have rules and regulations, like kind of just like be a good neighbor, don't lay out junk, don't like throw tires there or something.
Right.
Make
Well,
it sightly. Like people
yeah,
live here,
storing junk cars and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And maintain the building, the
Yeah.
house. They have to
Yeah,
maintain.
exactly. Make sure it looks nice, maybe power wash it or something, and that also contributes to the perception of it. When people drive through, they're like, okay, this is pretty nice, as
Right.
opposed to, oh, I want to get out of here yesterday.
Yeah, and I have been through a couple of them recently. Like I said, I go to Florida quite
Yeah.
frequently, and in Florida they have a lot more than they have here.
Mm,
But there are some of them are beautiful,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Um,
So
I think traditionally Florida had a lot more of them because people use them as second homes. So they're
yes,
like, oh, this is more affordable. But
right,
but now people are like, well, hey, with housing prices being like 4x the price of this, it actually makes a lot more sense. I'll just live here, save and invest the rest. I think in New York, that calculus kind of makes a little bit more sense because like it costs like 60% more to own a home in New York than it is to rent. So, a lot of people here and a lot of my friends, they rent and then they invest the rest. And that is actually what moves their needle forward. I don't mean to go on and on, but like I think the playbook to win in every period of time changes. And I think the mistake some people make is like they have a playbook from 20 years ago. They're like, oh, I got to buy a single family home to like build wealth and stuff. And like if I can't do it, like there's something wrong with the world. But not really. It's like, hey, just kind of realize that, where are we right now? Like we're in the US. It's like one of the best investment environments in the world. That's why there's like $1.5 trillion of, investment inflow coming in from like outside countries because there's no better way to invest than here. So like, why not? Why not invest in the stock market? It's doing pretty good.
yeah. And to get like a 14, 15% return on your money, as far as someone that is retired is a pretty good return and pretty secure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't see where they lose too much on something like this.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically a part owner of a tangible property and you can walk to it, you can see it, and as opposed to like owning a company like, I don't know, Chegg, some
Right.
some company that's like disrupted by AI or something.
Yeah.
Now there's a place for both, of course, and like, make your own financial decisions, like, all that stuff. But yeah, I think I will leave with this is that, I've been in a fortunate position that I get to talk A in real estate, B in private equity to different people of different backgrounds, socioeconomic kind of wealth tiers and things like that, kind of like see how they think through things. And the most like successful people, they're never like yes or no people. They're like yes, but how much? Or they're like okay, I don't know, like real estate, like how much of my portfolio do I want to allocate here? How do I want to do it? Where do I invest? Stuff like that. It's never so like, oh, I don't do that. So it's been interesting learning from them.
Yeah, it gives them that piece of their portfolio.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you have, well, I have some of my portfolio is very, has a strong growth to it, and some, it's a very secure. So,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
this sounds like it's being the secure category,
Hmm.
more so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
thank you, Leo. We're talking with Leo Young. He's with Cornell Communities, and he'd be happy to talk with you. Well, you could go to his website, which is Cornell Communities and .com. I'm not going to spell it, Leo. But if you want to spell it again, you're welcome to, but I'm not going to
It's
spell
all
it.
good.
But it's Cornell
Yeah.
Communities, and it will also be in the the portfolio or the profile of the show. We'll have Leo's email website. Again, thank you,
Excellent.
Leo. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time. Good
It's my pleasure.
information.
Definitely. Thank you again.
Well, and I want to thank everyone for listening. And you're listening to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cassidy Paving. Contact Cassidy Paving at CassidyPaving.com for all your paving needs. To be a sponsor on our podcast, contact me at rkaplan at nerej.com. Until next time. That wasn't bad, was
Yeah, that was good. You asked some really interesting questions. So, yeah,
it?
great work with that.
Well, those are questions that I'm sure that people will probably want to understand what
Yeah.
their investment
Hmm.
would have
Yeah.
to be secure.
Yeah, it's just such a new kind of concept to a lot of people. So, yeah, I mean, my team, like we answer this all the time. And yeah, that's why, we have a lot of like educational resources. So you're not like feeling like you're asking basic questions. So it's just like, hey, here's like top 10 questions people ask. Like, let us know how we can help you, that kind of stuff.
But like when I was talking about the hurricanes and tornadoes, and I saw a
Yeah.
product once, I forget it was like what at a trade show, maybe a
Mm.
construction trade show,
Mm-hmm.
for mobile homes,
Hmm.
manufactured homes, where
Yeah.
they had the anchoring systems that they had
Oh, yeah. Yep.
cemented in the ground,
Yep.
and they had a strapping that connected
Hmm.
to the housing.
Okay.
So it wasn't going to be lifted up off the ground, if
Yeah.
there's a major hurricane, even though if it's a bad hurricane, they shouldn't be in the house, whether it's a motorhome, a mobile home, or a
Yeah.
regular home on cement foundation.
Yeah.
But it's just the new technology has just been a major difference in everything.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I go to these conferences. I try to go to at least one a year. And yeah, there's always like new kind of technology into place, and they kind of modernize a lot of the features. Like you're installing like utility submeters into these communities. That way, each resident can know how much they're using in terms of water and stuff like that. So there's a lot of kind of interest coming in here.
Well, I like the concept. It's more or less on the same idea as a condo,
Yeah.
uh, but they
Yeah,
they
that's
get a little
exactly it.
more of yard space, and a little more of their the ability to do, like you said, uh, their own
Yeah.
garden or
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And people really like it. I think just like visiting to some of these communities and stuff, like people really like it. That's like the feedback that they give us. And I mean, I would totally live in one of these.
yeah, I
If my
would
wife
too.
let me.
I would. Well, you must live in an apartment type of
Yeah,
condo
yeah,
or
yeah.
co-op
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, apartment, and
Yeah.
like you hear when like people are chatting in the hallway, having parties, or like kids are up or stuff, and it's like, I don't know, it disrupts
Yeah.
my flow.
I
Yeah, yeah,
again
yeah.
thank you, Leo. We're talking with Leo Young. He's with Cornell Communities, and he'd be happy to talk with you. Well, you could go to his website, which is Cornell Communities and .com. I'm not going to spell it, Leo, but if you want to spell it again, you're welcome to. But I'm not going to
It's
spell
all
it.
good.
But it's Cornell
Yeah,
Communities, and it will also be in the portfolio or the profile of the show. We'll have Leo's email website. Again, thank you,
excellent.
Leo. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time. Good
It's my pleasure.
information.
Definitely. Thank you again.
Well, and I want to thank everyone for listening. And you're listening to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cassidy Paving. Contact Cassidy Paving at CassidyPaving.com for all your paving needs. To be a sponsor on our podcast, contact me at rkaplan at nerej.com. Until next time.